Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about how anarchy would be chaos. There'd be chainsaws and flamethrowers and axe murders 24/7. It would be wild, wild west, dog eat dog, every man for himself, Mad Max, doomsday scenario. We would have to trust everybody's goodwill, and the most evil people would take advantage of society and rule. That sounds kind of familiar, but yeah, that's what anarchy would be, right? That's what everybody seems to think about what an anarchist society would look like. That somehow we trust everybody's goodwill to act like angels, and that everything is completely voluntary. Like, you can do whatever you want. There's really no consequences, no rules. And that's not what anarchism is all about. It's not no rules, it's no rulers. So let me explain. I promise it'll make sense by the end of this video. So we know that the vast majority of people want and are willing to pay for basic safety services like what we expect from the police, the military, the courts, dispute resolution, etc. How do we know that? One, just observe our democracy. People vote for these things. The vast majority of people vote for these things over and over and over again. It's not even a question. And two, just tell anybody you're an anarchist, and immediately that's the fear they espouse, that society would collapse, and that's why we need government, and we have to have these things, we have to pay for them, otherwise it'd be chaos. So clearly, the vast majority of people want and are willing to pay for basic security and safety and protection services. That is, the things that we believe are holding criminals back, the evil people in society that want to take advantage of us and kidnap us and steal from us. And to a large degree, yes, I agree that that's what holds people back, is the threat of force for bad actions. There are consequences for stealing and kidnapping and raping and murdering. Yeah, I agree there should be consequences. However, I don't agree that government is the way to achieve those things. So here's an analogy. Say we're arguing about American slavery back in the 1800s, and I say, well, I think slavery's good. And you say, well, no, slavery's actually immoral. And then I say, what, you're against farming? Now, we know it doesn't even need to be said. That's just completely ridiculous. Yet somehow we have this idea that without government, without forcing people to pay for something, in this case, basic security and protection services that most people want, that somehow those services would not exist in the free market. And I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? There's a demand for it. There's money to be made. So why do we have this idea that those services couldn't possibly happen? So an anarchist society would be organized around the non-aggression principle. And why am I so confident in that? Well, the non-aggression principle, or the NAP, is the most basic, bare bones concept of morality that we all know intuitively, and we've all been taught as kids. And you almost don't even need to be taught it. You still know basic right and wrong. That is, don't hit, don't steal. Don't initiate force against other people, which hitting and stealing fall under that category. It's okay to defend yourself or to use violence or force to defend against theft or aggression. Someone's going to murder you, rape you, whatever. It's okay to use force in those situations. And I think that's the misconception about anarchism, is that it's pacifism, and it's not pacifism. That's the kicker. People think we just need to lie down and take whatever criminals want to do to us. They think because government runs the police, that no government, no police. And that's, again, with the slavery example, it's just kind of goofy when you think about it. So, let's see what's next. People often have this fear that, well, in an anarchist society, there would just be these big evil corporations that would just use force to get their way. They would take advantage of people. They would drive up a tank to your front door and say, hey, if you don't pay, we're going to haul you away in a cage for years. And it would just be might makes right. But think about it. Doesn't that kind of sound familiar? If you do not pay your taxes, you will be hauled away and put in a cage for years. You don't have a choice. Now, you can vote on taxes, but that does not change the fact that taxation is theft. And I have a whole video on why taxation is theft you can watch. But again, the government is doing exactly what everybody is afraid companies would do in the free market. force people to buy things that they don't want. Think about it. The government has the legal right to, not the moral right, but at least the legal right to violate your rights. And people say anarchism is a utopian, idealistic, naive idea. What about the idea that a central agency with the legal right and actual obligation to coerce you to violate your rights, that's somehow not going to become corrupt and do the exact opposite of what you want? Think about it. The government is indebting your children, starting wars on your dime, locking millions of people up, again on your dime, for victimless crimes, passing untold number of laws and regulations that make your life worse. We have over 700 military bases, which make us less safe. But if you're watching this video, you probably realize that, the military is actually just a big racket. The war is a racket, and people are finally waking up to that concept that we don't need government to keep us safe. The free market can provide that service on its own. But lastly, again, on the concept that anarchism is a utopian, naive ideal to strive for. Okay, this idea of government or democracy, it implies that, or at least everyone who believes in it seems to believe that doing something that is wrong for everyone else to do in any other situation, that is stealing or kidnapping, that action is wrong unless it has a badge or a law behind it, unless the majority decided it was okay, or unless it was written on a piece of paper, maybe called the Constitution, that this thing is okay. And that is what is so dangerous about the concept of government in general. It disarms people's basic moral compass. It fogs their moral compass and makes them blind to actual evil in the world. People assume that if the government is doing something, that it has some cloak of legitimacy, that it would be wrong for you to resist that by force. And that is the one advantage that the free market has over the government, is that if companies were actually just outright violating your rights, stealing from you, kidnapping you, etc., you would see it. It'd be clear as day, just like the sun is shining right in my face. It would be annoying to you and completely obvious. But when the government does it, somehow we think, well, this is a product of the democratic process, and we need to abide by it and be civilized citizens. And people just don't see bald-faced theft and evil right in front of their face. And that's what's dangerous about democracy and government in general, is that it gives evil the claws that it needs. It gives it the invisibility cloak to wreak havoc on society. So again, in conclusion, anarchists don't trust every single person. They're not pacifists. They don't believe that we need to just lie down and take whatever criminals want to foist upon us in society. We believe in protection services, all the things that we want, dispute resolution, protection for property rights. It's just that we want private agencies to provide that product or service because they actually have a financial incentive to please us. You can't argue that incentives don't matter in determining the outcome of a system. And compare government with any company. Government has, compared to the free market, relatively low incentives when it comes to pleasing their customer. And it makes perfect sense. Think about it. They take with guns. The free market depends, a company in the free market, their financial well-being depends on pleasing their customer. You can fire them at any time. You cannot fire the government. Think about the quality of a relationship in arranged marriages versus voluntary marriages. I mean, set aside the practical, just think about it theoretically, just the pure theory right now. And it's completely crazy to have this idea that somehow this involuntary relationship is going to create anything but crony capitalism and complete corruption, the opposite of what we intend. And that's what tends to happen when you introduce the initiation of force into any human relationship. You tend to get the exact opposite of your intended goal. So anarchy would not be chaos. In fact, I believe it would be much more orderly and produce a much more peaceable human society. But the idea that we can have peace in human society when the very foundation of our society is built around theft and kidnapping, that's the utopian idea. And that's what we need to wake up to, because when people have this idea that government is legitimate, that's what leads us down the road of tyranny over and over and over again throughout human history, because people don't see it coming until it's too late, until they're being herded in the cattle cars. And you might not be herded, you aren't being herded into a cattle car right now, hopefully, but that doesn't mean you're not living in a system that's far more conducive to tyranny and evil and genocide. So anarchists are the real hard-nosed realists. They're the ones who realize that we can't possibly have an organization in society with the legal right to rob us, that we need to have peaceful, voluntary human interaction to have a snowball's chance in hell of a peaceful and prosperous society. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.